How's it going, Summoners? And nice to see you for a new RiftGuides WildRift video. My name is Kirks, and for today we are going to take a look at the newly released beauty Kayle. And to start it off, let's start with her abilities. Kayle's passive is called Divine Ascent. The PC version has a few nice keywords that put emphasis on Kayle's divinity, and I personally think they suit her quite well. So let's just go with them. On certain level thresholds, Kayle gets additional unique effects that empower her. She's quite literally ascending throughout the game. On level 1, she's Zealous, and her attacks grant her a stackable attack speed buff. This buff can have up to 5 stacks, and once the passive is fully stacked, she's also gaining extra movement speed. On level 5, Kayle rises from a melee champion into a ranged champion. On level 10, Kayle's a flame. Her fully stacked passive turn her auto attacks into waves that apply the passive damage of Starfire Spellblade. On level 15, Kayle becomes Exalted. Her auto attack range is further increased, and the bonus from her passive becomes permanent and doesn't need to be stacked up anymore. Her first ability is called Radiant Blast. Upon casting it, Kayle launches a celestial sword that deals magic damage to all targets in its way. On top of that, targets that are hit are slowed and have their armor and magic resist reduced by 15%. Kayle's second ability is named Celestial Blessing. Using this, heals not only herself but also a nearby ally. At the same time, it also grants bonus movement speed to both her and the ally she has healed. The third ability is called Starfire Spellblade. It has a passive and an active effect. Skilling this spell permanently increases Kayle's on-hit damage. Casting it though grants Kayle an empowered attack that deals bonus damage to targets that are on low HP. You'll quickly realize that it's quite easy to secure all kills with this ability. And another thing that's quite important is the fact that upon hitting level 10, this ability becomes an AoE ability. And trust me, its range is absolutely absurd. And before we get to Kayle's ultimate ability, let's take a small break for our question of the day. What are your goals for the next season? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Her ultimate ability is called Divine Judgment. It grants invulnerability and can be cast on yourself and allies. Even better, it also deals AoE damage to all enemies that are still within its range after the timer expires. Thinking about this, you may come up with some nice draft ideas such as Kai'Sa and Kayle. Why those two though? And here's the deal. You may communicate with your Kai'Sa that wants to ult into the enemy backline. Briefly before that, you use your ultimate on her and then she charges in. Being invulnerable, as well as a walking time bomb, she is now in the most vital area of the enemy team, the backline. And what comes next? Boom, ace, victory. But there's one unique drawback to Kayle's ultimate. Kayle can move but not attack or cast spells while casting Divine Judgment. However, shortly before you turn vulnerable again, you are able to cast at least one auto attack and animation cancel it with your Starfire Spellblade. Now let's talk about where Kayle should be played in terms of the meta, her role, and what she desires the most as a character. Kayle is a solo laner, meaning she's either played in the Baron or mid lane. It's very unlikely to see her in the jungle unless you're trying to funnel her in some kind of way, but even then her clearing is very slow in comparison to other junglers. Consequently, she might be a victim to a lot of invades or overall early aggression and cannot reach her power spikes fast and reliable enough. So let's just stick with the solo lanes for now. Kayle is a melee champion in the beginning of the game, and she's really not the strongest when it comes to her early game. Depending on the champion she's facing, she can almost be abused in every scenario and therefore suffer quite a lot. The probably most ideal plan against the Kayle is to stack a slow push into her and dive her on the third wave, which is conveniently a cannon wave. For this though, you need to communicate very well with the jungler and be familiar with how waves work. Don't worry, we'll cover this in depth in the future. Since we've talked about how Kayle may suffer from the enemies being good, let's talk about how Kayle wants to play the lane herself. During the early game, Kayle never wants to push the wave unless she's able to fully crash it for a reset. Normally though, you will see a Kayle hold the wave close to her own tower. In this case, however, you need to be very careful that the wave isn't too big, or else you'll be dove like in the example before. Let's talk about some specifics for her laning phase, especially the level related power spikes. From levels 1 to 4, Kayle is nothing but a weak minion that can CS from range with a Thirst and 3rd ability. You can also say in this time she is the most vulnerable. At level 5, Kayle can finally start actively playing the game as she evolves into a ranged champion that can now finally hit back. To be fair though, hitting back might be kind of an overstatement, it's more like tickling back, but at least you have the option to do something in return now. As Kayle gains levels, she finally becomes stronger, and the next biggest spike happens on level 10 when she finally gains access to her empowered wave-like auto attacks. Happiness will also be your companion the moment you hit level 15. Now you're permanently exalted, got some more range, and your Runan's Hurricane is absolutely cracked now. Why? You will know very soon. But first, how do we reach those levels? We want to hyper farm everything and more. Jungle camps, waves, tower platings, take everything. On that note, during mid-game you might also freeze a side lane to deny the enemies some additional gold. Another benefit of doing this is also some added safety to yourself, cause it's way harder for the enemy team to deal with you when you're so close to your own tower and base. By doing this, you're also creating another neutral objective the enemy has to deal with, otherwise they're going to bleed gold until you stop the freeze. But what do you do when the enemy team forces plays on the other side of the map? When you see the enemy is going for a proactive play on the other side of the map, it's your time to capitalize on it. Crash the wave, go for platings, camps and everything mentioned before. You need gold and experience, and for those two you need to be very selfish. And trust me, you can easily carry late game on your own. Next up comes the itemization, and here we have some secret tech just for you. That way you're going to carry your games with ease, no problem. For items, we want to start with Nash's Tooth into a Runan's Hurricane and then a Rabadon's Death Cap. It might sound weird, but hear me out. The moment you're at level 10 on Kayle, your fully stacked passive allows you to shoot out waves with auto attacks. Those waves magically multiply your on-hit damage on other targets and you deal a massive amount of extra damage. For no apparent reason. It's absolutely broken, and I'll be straight up honest here, I don't think this is intended, so abuse it while you can. Once you completed those 3 items, you want to go for Void Staff to make sure that you deal the most damage possible. After that, we just grab ourselves a juicy Lich Bane to literally one-tap anything that comes our way. Alternatively, you can also build the Lich Bane immediately after the Rabadons, but that's up to you. For boots, you want Gluttonous as you lack sustain. So unironically, an Ocean Dragon is one of the best dragons for your champion with this build. As for your enchantment, there's nothing really wrong with going Zhonya's to stall for even more time during a teamfight. In addition to that, since we can't do anything but run away when we ult an ally, we might as well Zhonya's in a dangerous situation. Trust me, you will die cause you tried helping an ally more than once when playing Kayle. It's just the way it goes. Lastly, we have runes. And in the rune department, we are going to be a bit more diverse. You may take Conquer as your keystone for more damage and overall cause it's a broken rune. Other than that, you have Fleet at your disposal. It's very good when you're facing a very difficult matchup and need every point of HP to avoid dying. However, don't forget that laning is only a short part of WildRift and that Fleet scales substantially worse than Conqueror. In the Domination tree, you ideally want Vampirism, Weakness or Brutal. Vampirism would grant you a little bit more scaling. On the other hand, Weakness will make your first ability increase not only yours, but also your allies' damage. For Brutal, it would just be helpful to give your laning phase a little bit more power as you're not the strongest champion early on and every point of AP can help make the difference. In the Resolve tree, you're able to choose again between 3 runes that can help you either scale, snowball or survive. Let's start with Adaptive Carapace. This rune is especially good if you're facing one certain type of damage, for example a full physical draft. The next rune in this tier would be Bone Plating. Overall, it's a really shabby rune, but against combo-centric champions such as Renekton, it really works wonders. Last but not least, for the Resolve tree we have Hunter Titan. It's a very nice scaling rune that is overall just as broken as Conqueror is. But there's one thing we have to remind ourselves about. As a Baron laner, your kill participation will be relatively low in most cases throughout the early and mid stages of the game, and therefore you'll not have any benefit from this rune, so your options might be a bit more limited in that regard. On the mid lane though, you'll be exposed to a lot more action and will have access to more stacks earlier. Obviously, the same applies to the Vampirism rune. And now let's talk about the inspiration tree. Here we have something very simple. As per usual, your local hero Sweet Tooth takes the place. And that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.